Good afternoon. My name is Monica Scott, and I am the Public Education and Volunteers Coordinator for the Spurlock Museum. And welcome to the Contemporary Conversations program, Hey, the Blues is All Right. We would like to begin today by recognizing and acknowledging that we are on the lands of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Waya, Miami, Mascoutin, Odawa, Sauk, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. These lands were the traditional territory of these Native nations prior to their forced removal. These lands continue to carry the stories of these nations and their struggle for survival and identity. As a land grant institution, the University of Illinois has a particular responsibility to acknowledge the peoples of these lands, as well as the histories of dispossession that have allowed for the growth of this institution for the past 150 years. We are also obligated to reflect on and actively address these histories and the role that this university has played in shaping them. This acknowledgement and the centering of Native peoples is a start as we move forward for the next 150 years. Today's Contemporary Conversations program connects with the museum's current exhibit, Blues Dancing and its African-American Roots. The program will explore blues music and its cultural influence. Before I introduce the panelists, I want to remind everyone of a few things. This program is being recorded and streamed to Facebook. Live transcriptions are available and the controls can be accessed at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can use the Q&A box to ask the panelists questions. At the close of the program, your screen will open to a 5-question survey. We would really appreciate you taking the time to complete this survey. Your responses help us learn more about our programs. And finally, if you're interested in signing up for Spurlock's monthly e-newsletter, the link will be shared in the chat. Now I'll introduce our panelists. First, Dawn Clark. Dawn was born and raised in Urbana. She's a graduate of Urbana High School and began singing when she was about 5 years old. In 2006, she and her 2 cousins formed the group DaJa Vu. She's currently a vocalist for 2 local blues bands, the Painkillers Blues Band and Candy Foster and the Shades of Blue. You can also see Dawn on the Spurlock Museum's website. She participated in the Blues Dancing Oral Histories Project. That link will be shared in the chat as well. Next is Bob Palesny. Bob is the blues genre director for WEFT 90.1 community radio station. In this role, he stays in touch with blues labels, promoters, and artists to acquire new music and process it for airplay at the station and reporting charts of the blues spins. He's also the current president of the Prairie Crossroads Blues Society, a nonprofit local affiliate of the Blues Foundation based in Memphis, Tennessee. Their mission is to preserve, promote, and educate about the blues. Next is Dr. Augustus Wood. Dr. Wood is a postdoctoral research associate in the School of Labor and Employment Relations here at UIUC. He also works with the Prairie Crossroads Blues Society's Blues in the Schools program, teaching blues history at area grade schools, libraries, and the Don Moyers Boys and Girls Club. Our moderator is Dr. Gabriel Solis. Dr. Solis is professor of musicology, head of the Department of Theater, and affiliate of African American Studies, American Indian Studies, and Anthropology. He has done ethnographic and historical research with jazz musicians in the United States and with musicians in Australia and Papua New Guinea. Drawing on work in African American studies, anthropology, and history, he addresses the ways people engage the past, performing history and memory through music. And finally, but certainly not least, is Mr. Candy Foster. Mr. Foster has been performing classic rhythm and blues throughout the Midwest for 40 years. Born in Danville, Illinois, based in Champaign, Urbana since the 1960s, Mr. Foster is well known as one of the hardest working blues singers in the area. He got his big break when saxophonist Tony Zamora asked him to sing the blues for a nightly gig at the Rainbow on North First Street. He went on to have his own band, Soul Brothers, which gained regional fame in the Vietnam era. Since 1996, he has been performing with his band, The Shades of Blue. Over the years, Candy Foster has appeared with such blues greats as Etta James, Coco Taylor, Junior Wells, Clarence Gatemouth Brown, Little Milton, Bobby Blue Band, Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, the list goes on and on. Please join me in welcoming this terrific panel.
Well, thank you very much, Monica. That's great. And thanks to everyone for being here. It's good to have this group of folks to have a conversation with about the blues. And I'm excited to hear what people have to say. Certainly it's a music that I've loved for many years. And I feel like something I always am discovering something new about. So I'm looking forward to learning more from all of y'all great panelists. So thanks for doing this. The setup here is that I'll ask some questions and then turn things over to you. And I look forward to hearing how the dialogue grows as we go on here. And I don't know if this is the best starting point, but I thought as a good starting place, I'd ask the big question, which is, what is the blues to you? This is one of these words that I think it has a lot of meanings for a lot of different people. It's I don't know, is it just a genre of music? Is it a feeling? Is it a philosophy? Is it an approach to life? Is it if you're feeling blue, is that the blues? Is it more than that? These are questions people I think often ask about this music. So I don't know who wants to start with that, but what is the blues to you?
Well, I guess I could go a little bit. It is a music. Originally, I think mainly from Africa, and I think mainly out of the Delta area, Clarksdale, Mississippi, Memphis areas. Kind of grew up the Mississippi River, St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, spread throughout the country. And I think, like you say, mainly starting from African-American communities. I think a lot came from the front porches. People used to sit around in the evenings after they were working, and that was their way to enjoy themselves and to get rid of the tough days that they had to work through. And I think these days, I think it's the same thing. Blues is a healer for a lot of people. It's a music that doesn't really give you the blues. I think in many ways it uplifts you and cures the blues.
Yeah, it's just like life, such as it is. Blues, to me, is a expression of people that have a lot of feeling, the where it come from, where they was raised, how they were raised, the stories. It's a lot of stories, good, bad, and ugly. And most of them start by expressing from the church. Gospel is the root of all blues. Blues came from gospel. That's where you got your meaning, and you got all that other stuff, that the rhythm, the feeling, the chant, it all come from the church. So again, it's about life, such as it is, one way or the other, where you get, and wherever you come from. You had the blues. No, if you didn't even know it, you might have had the blues. Good and bad.
Absolutely. And I'd like to add a little bit onto that and definitely tie together what Bob is saying and what Candy Foster is saying. It is a way of life. It definitely stemmed from our Southern Baptist churches. It stemmed from our experiences, message bringing and storytelling in the cotton fields in the slave days. And again, after working hard, like you say, front porch, working hard all day, you come home and the first thing you want to do is say, oh, boss man made me mad. you know, and then you got something that you want to tell your family about that makes them feel good, it sounds good, and it doesn't sound like you're just coming home and complaining about your job and your hard times. You know what I mean? So I think that in a nutshell, blues is a kind of music. It is a kind of feeling. It definitely is a philosophy, and it's an approach to life. But it is also a method to tell stories and bring forth messages to other people, friends, family, loved ones. When you add some of the music behind that, that's when you get the dancing.
Mm, mm.
Yeah,
Make you feel good.
definitely an agreement. I think that's one of the biggest things that we can take from the blues is it is a cultural production through the experiences of work, of experience of life. As Bob and Don, others mentioned that, you know, the blues, the roots of it are in the traditional African labor songs from pre-slavery days. You know, when you go and you see the fishermen and, you know, and you see the kind of work they're doing, the rhythm and the songs that they're having about their days and what they look forward to after the day is over, or the complaints of the day, you know. So I would argue that it's a cultural production that also comes from the alienation of labor struggles, just being out there doing the kind of work that you have to do, even though it's for the necessity of survival, you still have to do the work and you have to find enjoyment in doing it as well. Right. And so just kind of adding what everybody else is saying, that the experiences, particularly in the day-to-day life of work and enjoyment of family, love, etc., they all help produce the culture of the blues. Absolutely. So it is everything that everybody mentioned, and that makes it into a culture based on how we live our day-to-day life.
So can I ask a question actually about maybe getting to this issue of like the relationship to the church and to the spiritual domain, or the domain of the divine even. You know, I know sometimes people hear the, you know, story about like, I don't know, Robert Johnson and the Crossroads, yes, you know, the devil.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm curious to hear more about what you think about this other relationship that seems much more kind of communal and about sort of the broader kind of African-American life experience.
Well, you know, there's a history behind that whole Robert Johnson and the Crossroads thing. There was recently a documentary that was shown on television, and they distinctly said in that documentary that blues music did not stem from gospel music. I do not agree with that concept. I think that what happened was you have these staunch Southern Baptist Christian families that brought their families up in the church. They raised their children up in the church, and the church is everything that it is. But then the music feels so good that some people decided, you know what? I may need to make a little extra money. I'm going to go down the road to the juke joint and I'm going to give it a try at what I can do, whether it be singing, whether it be me, I just enjoy playing the guitar. I'm just going to take my guitar that I play at church down to the juke joint. I'm going to see if they can throw me some coins. And then what you had was a condemnation between our Southern Black Baptist churches and their members and their families, loved ones, and children going into what they call the streets and playing what they consider the devil's music because it wasn't played in the churches. But if you take the words away from blues and gospel and you just play the music itself, very much the same. Yeah. Very much the same.
Very true. Ray Charles lost half his band because somebody called him out because most of his music was related as the background music and the way it was done. Only the lyrics was changed. They were gospel music. Mm-hmm. And some of the people in the community called him out on it and embarrassed him, and half of the band quit.
Yes, I remember.
On account of that.
over here.
They were doing some Sacramento, they didn't like it, they got scared of it. It goes on and on. I could sit here for 20 minutes and tell you about how many of your super blues and jazz and that came from gospel first.
Sure.
Yeah.
You got people like
80% of it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
People like Al Green, who started out in gospel music, went over to secular music. There are people like Reverend Gary Davis, who quit playing the devil's music and went back to being a reverend and a preacher for 20 or 30 years, and then went back to playing the devil's music again.
Sam Cooke.
And just to give it an example, because I sing better than I play instruments. You know, if you think about the way Etta James sang, you know, she did a lot of growling and grinding, stuff like that. There were gospel singers, female gospel singers in these churches that would do that without any music. Lord, I know I've been changed. And they would, you know, it's the same type of growl, grind, and all of that was gospel and it's blues. The only difference is the lyrics. And I think that's where the division and the sacrimonious part comes from.
That's right.
I think Don brings up probably the most important point that we need to take away from this is that it's really kind of a baseless argument that they're both the one and the same, and they come from the experiences of struggle by Black people.
Yes.
And that's where it's always going to be centered and cornered. And when you have these kinds of discussions and debates amongst some groups who have never actually been a part of the blues or know of the blues, then they start trying to overtalk it and take away the connections and trying to decenter and fracture a lot of what makes it such a unifying force for culture. And that becomes problematic. We have to always center where it comes from and often talk about that production and why it matters, because we as Black folks love the church space as people.
Yes.
We love our music as people. We have struggled under oppression as a people. And so we express ourselves in different ways, whether they be sacred or secular. And so we just have to understand how those processes differ, but not that one is disconnected from the other or one didn't come from the other. I think that's a very problematic approach. And I'm glad that we're having this to kind of move away from that.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been struck by how these sounds move back and forth also, right? So you get sounds from gospel into R&B, and then, you know, right? And Ray Charles hardly even changed the lyrics that much. Hallelujah, I just love her.
No, couldn't help it.
But then things go back the other direction as well. And lots of gospel singers take up soul sounds and you know,
Oh, sure it is.
hip hop even.
Yes.
Things move back and forth very, very easily.
You
It's
got
a
somebody,
profitable business.
Yeah.
It's profitable.
Profitable.
got somebody else like Aretha Franklin, whose father was a preacher, and many of the blues artists came up in the church like that, and that's where they began singing gospel in the churches.
Yeah.
And maybe wanted to make a few bucks on the side,
That's right.
or just felt more uplifted playing in front of a bigger crowd or something, or at a juke joint, or
It changed me.
I guess it sounds to me like also you're saying that blues is more than just entertainment and more than just a way to make a buck, that it's something that actually provides some real kind of life-giving value to people. I mean, when I hear you talk about story, I think about how important stories are to
Yes.
survival, really.
Yes.
Or when you talk about these things that are rooted in African tradition, I think about how much it's taken for people to maintain and continue those traditions in the face of real, you know, a system that really wanted to strip that away.
Mhm.
Hey, you know, the other thing is that I have to mention that blues and some of the songs have dictated to people how the saloons and the dirty stuff in life went on.
Sure.
They sing about that, the sex and the different things. But you know, that everything that tried to make people interested in what they were doing, but it's still a part of life. That's what goes on. And so you can't just leave out the bad part and not, and, you know, not sing about it or write about it.
Right.
'Cause a lot of bad things happens in them joints and juke joints, and you know, a lot of guys kill people about their wives or girlfriends, or yeah, that's how BB lost the first guitar. Two women fighting over a man. They got burned up. The place, you know, the juke joints and all that stuff. That's all they sing about. A lot of that stuff is all part of when on weekends.
Yeah.
And what's the name of the program here? The Blues Is All Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Little Milton knew what he was talking about because he talked about Annie Mae's Cafe.
Yeah.
And all that. Little Milton lived that life.
Mm-hmm.
Little Milton, he was a juke joint man.
Yeah.
I knew him personally, and so I know what he did. You know? So, you know, Little Milton was something else. Of course, some of the rest of them were too. You know?
Y'all
And
got history right
just-
here. History.
Yeah, and
it just-
BB King, he had the problem. He had his problem too, but he wasn't like Little Milton. But he had his problems. Yeah.
And just a lot of, you know, I think that's a great point to bring up as well, is that the places where blues either thrived or grew in these juke joints, a lot of these places provided some of the best jobs for a lot of Black people in those particular times they were living in.
Yeah.
And so again, you have people who were experiencing and seeing these things on a daily basis. It was all informing the experience. And as we talked about before, it wasn't simply just as an expression of music or also a way to make money, even though those were very important things, particularly in these Jim Crow and these lynching times where it was difficult to find a good labor position, particularly in the South. But you also had blues music and blues musicians actually using the spaces to build their neighborhoods, you know, because you would have people come from out of town to come and see these acts, and it will also generate some funds for the creation of the neighborhood. And so there's so many really cool aspects to how blues music, not just the actual music itself, but the social institutions that thrived and expanded because of blues music, you know. And I think that's what's one of the great things of having these type of different guests that we have on today. We have an actual blues historian musician here, and we have another musician who, and I love the Don, you already hitting those notes for us already.
Oh yeah, she's doing
So
it.
I'm just
Huh?
letting you know that. So you got the expectations really high. And then we have Bob and myself. And I think that having these kinds of events is showing how we're recreating those social institutions by bringing out the blues in not just a musical sense, but in a social, political, economic sense as well. And that just shows that the multidimensional nature of blues, because it's just so many things, and that we choose in our own agency of what to make of it. It's really beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna mention it, but since we got there, I was one of the musicians that had a juke joint.
All right.
Yeah. I had a club on First Street here in Champaign called Candy's Lounge. And one of the main reasons for that is, you know, I wanted to make a little money, but my point was to keep music alive. I was a one of them kind of guys. I loved jazz just almost as much as I did blues. So, and R&B too. Music to me is, you know, a way of life. So all kind of music. I like country music. So my point being is that the reason why I bring the Candace Lounge up is because it was another place where people could hear, you know, the real live, real soulful type of music. You know, I didn't want that, what they call fake blues.
Mm.
You know, we got a lot of bands out there, they blew in the blues, but it ain't real blues. You know, I mean, it's blues, but it ain't the way it's supposed to be. But so I was bringing in some artists that did the real deal. You know, you understand what I'm saying? And so that was my main thing to do like that, because it gave people from Champaign, Decatur, Danville, and all of them, they'll come over and they say, man, Candy, where did you find these people? And there I find a lot of them out Chicago and Annapolis. They have another twist to the blues that some of us down here can't play. We don't play it. We don't know how to play it.
Mhm.
It's a big difference. Yeah, I mean, we had to show you before they can tell you. But so it's funny things like that. And for people like yourself and everybody on this panel, I think this is so important for a lot of different ways, because one of my main things that I cry about a lot is the young people, especially young Black people in Illinois and the Midwest. They don't seem to understand how important Black culture music, especially the blues, is. They are not really getting it. We're not getting to them. If you go into clubs, you go into shows, there is not a lot of young Black people in no blues club or blues concert. I go to Buddy Guys, I go to this and I go to, and you know, me and Bobby Rush is real close. But they'll tell you too that the Black youth are not taking the responsibility of holding on to that and finding out about what's going on with the blues and the history of it, what we're doing now.
Hmm. So is there, I'm curious, you know, I guess I know that in some ways live venues have declined, right? There's sort of fewer venues and less just live music maybe in a place like this than there was in the 70s, 60s, 70s. But I'm curious if the spirit of the blues, and it sounds, I hear, you know, I think about like blues is in R&B, is in soul, is in gospel. You know, is the spirit of the blues also living in hip hop? Is it also living in other kinds of music that maybe young people,
That's life.
African American folk, are involved with?
Absolutely, it is, but the problem is there's a generation of young people that aren't educated on where the samples and the snippets come from that they use in these rap songs and these R&B songs, and it's just stuff that they may have heard growing up, but they've never necessarily known who the artist is or the history behind that music. It just sounds good, and they got a set of words that they can put to it, and they can make a slam hit. They're just going to pay whatever royalties that they need to pay to make it happen. But that's really, I don't think blues is going anywhere. I don't think that blues is becoming watered down. I think that just like anything else, blues has got to be taught in the home. I mean, I can't for the life of me stress enough Me growing up, my dad is a huge Bill Withers fan, Bill Withers fan. And this man played Bill Withers so much to where I knew every song, word for word, next song after the next song, frontwards and backwards, and would sing along with it. And so those are the things that I remember growing up. It was grounded and instilled in me by my parents. Myself, I've got a 21-year-old daughter. She's familiar with the blues. She's familiar with jazz. She's familiar with the 90s era R&B. But I immersed her in that. So if we are no longer a generation of parents where we're immersing our children in the things that helped us come through and overcome problems, then they're not going to understand it, or it's not going to be an attractive genre of music for them to want to buy or listen to or stream.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Well
right.
said. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had those records playing in the background too when I was younger. The first time I heard B.B. King, ironically, was on the episode of Sanford and Son. So, because that's one thing that Sanford always he had two loves. He had Billy Eckstine and B.B. King. And so that was my introduction, because I remember being very young. And then my parents just hearing some of those records and me asking about B.B. King. And that's when I segued into Muddy Waters, and then the Ella Fitzgerald, Miles Davis, all these folks and all these other cats and all this other music. And so it was just part of the household. And that's something that you would find with kids from the 80s and 90s is that, especially the hip hop kids 80s and 90s, is that when you check their record collections, they had all of those blues records in there, and they can actually tell you word for word every verse of every song. Because again, when you were a DJ back then, when you had to carry those crates and you had to play that music, you had to know it, or else you would get called out for it. So I think that is because my sister was one of those people that knew every song, because she was really into that 80s and 90s style, and then knowing the 30s and 40s blues and jazz and soul and gospel. And so, it is. I think, you see a break in the youth today, the children probably born after 2000. There is that kind of break to where they just know of one thing, and they can't even tell you where the sample came from.
No.
And so, it's not being taught in the home. And one of the things I love that Bob and the Blues Prairie Society does is they have people like me go in and teach kids blues history in their school system. We need to expand that further. I mean, let's be honest now. Let's call it out. We got all this money coming in from the COVID relief bill to help with public education. One of the things that has to be built in is to improve in Black education and Black history, and for blues history should be part of that.
It should be.
Yes,
absolutely.
So I mean, we got to push that into the forefront, because that's how this is going to get going again. Is if it's part of the school and it's a part of the church, it's going to be a part of the household. That's what we got to be moving towards. That we're going to make sure that not only does it live forever, but we have youth that are actually building on the blues and not just sampling from it. Right?
Amen.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like you all got to know the blues early on, right? This was music that you started hearing when you were
Absolutely.
Very young, very young.
I was a rock and roller when I was a kid, but
all right.
Yeah, we won't hold that against you.
But I mean, you can't listen to rock and roll without realizing that, it came through Muddy Waters, or
It did.
Oh, yeah.
you look at the back of the Led Zeppelin album, it says Willie Dixon. You got to ask yourself, who is this Willie Dixon?
I know about him.
Yep. I mean, that's what the Rolling Stones, they came to Chess Records. They wanted to meet Muddy Waters. That was their hero. So I kind of came to the blues through the back door there a little bit, but
that's all right. It's good.
You nestled your way in there real nice.
Thank you.
Well, and I mean, it strikes me, one of the things that seems really true here is also that white American culture has a Black history as well in a certain way. And if we're teaching blues to young people, there may be, they will see these kinds of things as well, and get, as white young people get a chance to get to know this music and understand its power as well in some kind of
Well, I can definitely say that the white interest in the blues and black music has been synonymous. I mean, it's been big.
Yeah.
Because to me, if it hadn't been for that, we really would have had a problem. We got a problem now with certain generations, but it would have been gone. Seriously gone. I don't think it ever go away, but my point being is we wouldn't have some of the artists we got now, and talking about how famous they are and how good they are, if we had been for white collar and blue collar and on up. It's like B.B. King was discovered twice. Now you want to ask me what that means? That means that at one time B.B. King was only known and he traveled half of his career around this country, playing in juke joints, barns, across the tracks, playing music, and nobody on the other side of the tracks even know what B.B. King was. What they thought that was some kind of gun or something. BB, they didn't know what that was. Rolling Stones. I mean, I'm sorry, the Beatles. They've discovered B.B. King again. When they come to this country to do big shows, they was asked, who you want to open up for them? And they were saying, so and so and so. We got different rock bands to open up for it. And they said, well, who are those bands? We ain't never heard of those bands. So where's the guys like B.B. King and Buddy Waters and all them guys? They like, who? Especially they didn't know who B.B. King was. And they said, yeah, that's who we want to open up. They even, when the Beatles came in this area, B.B. King opened the show. BB and everybody was in the guitar world was so outdone because they had spent all this money on these wah-wah pedals, and BB was doing without no pedals.
Right.
He was making the same sounds or better. So, and they was like, wow. They come to me and some of the young ones are gonna say, Mr. Foster, who is this guy? And I'm like, you got to be out of your mind. You don't know who B.B. King is? They don't know. Of course, I was seeing B.B. King when I was young blood. They had around the country in what they call a barn. You go out there and you pay $3 or $2 or something, I don't know, whatever. But but my point being is that these kind of people would have still been in that frame if it hadn't been for the white fans. Yes. And that goes for a whole lot of different type of music, especially Black artists, period.
Yeah, that's considered crossover.
Yeah.
It takes our white counterparts to gain an interest in what it is that we're putting out and producing in order to create what's called the crossover. You're crossing over from your juke joints and this side of the tracks is where you're stuck at.
Yeah.
Now we invite you over here to open up for this band that's a white, well-renowned band. Then all of a sudden you as the opening act have stolen the entire show, and you've amped up everybody and you've energized everybody, you've primed everybody, and now it's time for the main event. And next thing you know, they want to know where's that opening act going to be at next.
Yeah. And you did, and the promoters would get you in there no matter what.
You might have to come through the back door, or you might have to sit out there in your car until your time come to play. You couldn't do what the white artists could do now. You couldn't hang out and do all that, but you would get to on the show, and most of the time you'd be the best thing on the show, but that don't matter.
Right. That might get us back to Augustus's area of expertise as well, though, about the ways that, I mean, this is also labor, right? And there are some real inequities in the ways that blues musicians have been compensated for their labor as artists in relationship to white acts who may be
Sure,
looking
absolutely.
for.
There was a difference.
Oh, yeah, big difference. You know, first of all, you had to find out where you can play. You know, and then to get hired, you had to find out what you got to, yeah, what you go play. And so it was like, and even when you got hired, like I get hired in Chicago, okay, now some of these bands, they'd have the white bands would have nice equipment, nice sound system, and nice this and that, you know, all kinds of things to play for a big party. The black bands, they didn't have all that. We come up there, and I used to come over here, I had a 65 station wagon that a lot of the instruments and stuff was sticking out the back. We couldn't get them all in there. They said, "You got a sound man?" A sound man? I don't got no sound. Yeah, I remember being in Indianapolis and the keeper, Long Hampton big band was gonna play that night, and they wanted a thing doing that early evening opening, and they say, well, Foster, can you want to do that? Because I had been playing there around that area. So I went there and I played, took the gig, brother. They put us at said, go around the back. We took the little van around the back, and the man opened up the door, and I said, well, we're gonna start this. We started unloading. Man said, no, don't do that. Just drive the van inside. Okay. I drove the van in. The elevator went up to the 5th floor with the van. My little van was sitting up there in this great big stage. And so they took the little stuff off and put the drums up. And I looked out there and I'm like, I don't belong here. It was scary. So, you know, when people like bands like ours, when we first got introduced to some of that stuff, it was just scary. You know, we was used to the little bit of things, and yeah.
Flea circus kind of.
Yeah. And then we up in there, the band looked like a little toy in that place. You know? So, you know, it was great stuff, but yeah, you just never know about this, but you never get paid. The thing about it on the black circuit, now I have to tell you about this one. The black circuit was called the Chitlin Circuit. And I know probably heard different things about that, but I lived it. So my point is, not only was it rough, you had to live in, go down to Miss Johnson's and see if she had an extra room too, and they'll say so-and-so got somebody that's got 2 rooms down there, and so to put up the band. But and that kind of stuff. And you try to compensate them for what you are already trying to make. You had to go to black restaurants, and sometimes that wouldn't always work out.
Mm.
But you're living on a shoestring budget. If one thing would go wrong on your little tour, then you behind on money. So you still got to get gas. You're still trying to eat, and sometimes we just had to sleep in cars. And you didn't, it was just a lot of stuff that you went through before you even hit the stage. And another thing back then, musicians and entertainers dressed. They had uniforms, we had suits and all kinds of, and some of us try to have 2 changes here. But yeah, then you had nowhere to dress.
Yeah.
It was a lot of things like that went on about the chitlin circuit. And then the worst part about all of it was that most of the people that were having this stuff were black so-called promoters.
Mm-hmm.
Took the biggest cut.
Yeah, and well, they were crooked, to be honest with you. One for you and 4 for me. And they act like you don't be able to count. I'm up on the stage now. I'm looking at the people just like they are. I can pretty much tell when I see 100 people. I'm just using that as an example. But they tell you that, man, we had a bad night. We had about 35 people in here.
Yeah.
See, that kind of stuff, we went on and on. Then sometimes they just run out on you. They steal the money and run out. So.
Well, that's the blues, I guess. I don't know.
Yes, that's the blues. And then you got to, and it discourages a lot of guys.
Sure.
I mean, good musicians get discouraged. They're like, oh man, I'm going on, go over to General Motors and get me a job and go. I ain't doing this no more.
Hmm.
There's a lot of blues songs out there about working on the Cadillac assembly line.
Oh yes. I did that in Detroit. I did that song at a award show. Cadillac assembly line.
Oh, my
I thought that was great. I thought it was good. They like, yeah. They can relate to that. That was a good, but and who was that? Who did that? BB?
Albert King.
Albert King. Yes.
Now, I think you brought up an interesting point a little bit ago, Gabriel, about the labor involved. And you go back to a lot of the early chants and the call and response of the blues, people working in the fields, people working on chain gangs out of the prisons, people working, on railroad gangs and stuff like that, the Gandhi dancers. There was a big rhythm to that. And it was a way to get people all working on the same rhythm, all working together to get the job accomplished and get it done. They weren't getting paid a dime,
I know.
It was strictly to make the job easier for themselves to overcome and to move on, to get to the end of the day, to get across the river, to get away from the boss man, the big boss man.
Mhm.
And also the Plan Rebellion. Again, that's the words of the song were often coded to make sure that you had the preferential planning in place for when it was finally time to have the rebellion. And, again, a lot of that goes back to Bob mentioned the convict lease system, which of course is now being exposed for what it was and what it did to poor Black people following emancipation and following Reconstruction. But you also had this happening both during the plantation slavery times, but also in plantation sharecropping times because again, most of the issues that arose between the landowner, which was usually a white man, and a black tenant farmer during sharecropping, and my family came from sharecroppers, most of the issues that arose from it would be a labor dispute. And so after a while, you know, the tenant farmers don't get tired of you tacking on all that debt. And so, especially when the crop season ain't working, and the boll weevil comes out, then we got a problem.
Yeah, you got a problem. We had a problem.
So we're gonna have to deal with that problem because my family's gonna have to eat. And so yeah, this is real. This is why the blues is such a powerful cultural phenomenon, because it really does encompass all a good portion of Black history in it. I mean, it's just so much in it that you can get from it. And we talked about it, from the struggles, from the rebellions, from the getting through daily work, from finding love, from having your heart broken, from finding a job, from going to the Great Migration and coming back or sending for your people after you left home. I mean, there's just, it really is a personification of the struggle of being Black in America. And it's just so many different things. It's really, really touching on that, especially that labor aspect of it, because that was the first thing that we wanted once we found our families, was to provide for our families. Very powerful.
Yes, in most of our songs.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like, I mean, really, to get back to the conversation we had earlier about also gospel music, right? That there is this sense of the all-encompassing quality of this music as a resource for Black communities, not just, that blues actually also encapsulates much of the spiritual world. If often some of the more frightening aspects of that world, as well as, better parts of it. For sure. So I'm just looking at the time. I notice we're pretty close to the 5 o'clock hour here, and I know we're gonna want to open up for questions, shortly here from the audience. So I wanted to just take a minute to thank everybody for these kind of perspectives on this music and on the role it's played in Black life and in your own lives. And I think as a last kind of thing, I know I'm curious from your perspective, are there places where this music can still be heard today? I know that you're saying the young people haven't necessarily got it yet, but I know I was in Mississippi not long ago with an artist, a blues singer I work with in Australia, actually, an Aboriginal woman who's taken up this music. She was a Black Panther in the 60s in the Aboriginal Panther Party. We went to hear it at a juke joint that's also connected with the B.B. King Museum. And that seemed very happening. And there was, it was a very community kind of space, but closer here in Illinois, here in town. And we don't have Candy's Lounge any longer, but where I'm curious where as you see it, where this music lives now.
That's a good question.
Very good question.
For sure, down in Mississippi, you mentioned Clarksdale or Indianola.
Oh yeah, they got it going on.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. I think it's today, in this day and age, I think that you'll probably hear it more in the southern regions.
Gotcha.
And then, then you will hear in this central Illinois area.
You probably will hear it up north in Chicago. You'll probably hear it in Detroit. But this central Illinois area, for some reason, if you follow particular blues bands that you know of that are out here, then you'll find those locations. Neal Street Blues, you can probably catch a good blues band there. Clark Bar, you can probably catch a good blues band there. Alto Vineyard, you can catch a good blues band there. So it's specific places that are within the know of the blues community of people. I often invite friends and coworkers and families because I want to open that spectrum up in this area and have more people who maybe ain't thinking about it to just come on out and say, oh man, there's some really good blues bands in this area. Yeah, let's go do that. Kind of bring it back into vibrance on a cross scale of our Central Illinois communities.
Yeah, that's right. Only thing that we don't have here and probably won't have for a while is that, you know, you can say that Chinese place, you got places where it specializes in barbecue and food. You got people that there used to be several country western places that specialize in country western music. Iron Post and a few other places used to specialize in jazz. There is no place that all the places that we talk about that we play at around here now.
You can liable to hear anybody.
Yeah, you don't hear anything there. You just be lucky, and like she says, I will tell you when we're gonna be there doing the blues.
Right.
So you just got to catch the blues on the whim.
Yes, it's a complete word of mouth network.
Right. I mean, it ain't like WEFT where I know when they're gonna be playing the blues every 5 or 6 days a week. Now that's a good thing. Yeah. I can depend on that. And I would love to see where a club, when somebody, friends of mine or people of any color come to town, that will say, "Hi, where's the Black Blues Club? Or where's the Blues Club?"
Mm-hmm.
And you can, well, we don't have a blues club, but there's some blues sometimes be played here or sometimes played there. You just have to catch it on the right day.
Yeah.
But that ain't people.
But like Dawn was saying, the people in the know, if you go to a Candy Foster show, it's going to be packed, no matter where he's playing. There's great local Chicago blues band, Kilbourne Alley Blues Band.
Yes, they are phenomenal.
And you go to one of their shows and it's packed, and they can play at any one of a half a dozen different venues like that. The people that are in the know are in the know, and they come out as a blues community to support the music.
Yes.
And
thank God for that. Thank God for that.
I was gonna say thank God for that, because boy, we'd be on shaky ground.
Bob, is that part of your work at the radio to promote this stuff, to keep that word of mouth flowing?
We typically broadcast the calendar that we get from the Prairie Crossroads Blues Society folks, and so typically at the top of each hour, our blues shows on WEFT run from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. And so typically at noon and 1 o'clock, we try to give a rundown of blues shows in the area, specifically Champaign-Urbana, but we're also covering Decatur and Springfield and sometimes Bloomington, Illinois and stuff. Again, it's a community of people who kind of know each other, and the word gets around. And so, yeah, WEFT tries to let the listeners know where they can go see some good blues.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the last time I saw Candy, your band was at probably at the Esquire. Of course, it's been a long time since I've gotten to see any live music, because of the pandemic. But summer we're back. I hope as soon as we can.
I sure hope so.
I miss it.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, and I'd like to take this time to say to some of the entertainers and of all kinds that I'm in the process of trying to get some people together to say we need to take care of our own, and I'm talking about musicians and entertainers.
Yeah.
We've having a lot of sickness and death throughout our music world, and we always want to try to acknowledge them. So I'm gonna be calling on different people and to help organize something like that so we can be ready for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's great. It is one of the hardest things, you know, if you're a musician, it doesn't come with a pension and it doesn't come with a health plan.
Right.
And it's for across the board for most kinds of music. It's one of the hardest
It
things.
really is. It's a hard business. You gotta love it.
You gotta love it.
That's right. So
Yeah,
Freddie King and BB King.
yeah,
That's a great starting point.
that's right. And,
Yeah.
you can't go too far wrong with that. But you know, the concept of, you know, we use the word blues. Blues is also instrumental too.
hmm,
You know, Macduff and Jim McGriff and George Benson and all them guys, a lot of that stuff they playing is the blues.
yep.
You know, they can play classic, play all that other stuff, but some of their hits are the blues.
Mhm.
You know, Ramsey Lewis, what's that, In Crowd or whatever.
Yeah.
He's a jazz musician, but he playing the blues.
Yep. Charlie Parker. A lot of those.
Charlie Parker, all of them.
Yeah.
Alice, it's called blues. It's in the name.
Miles Davis played the blues. Cannonball Adderley, but Mercy, 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 and all that stuff
Yeah.
is the blues.
Yeah.
So, you know, all I'm saying, you know, it comes into to play where people, that's the reason why I'm saying the understanding of what the blues is all about, and you got to recognize what it is, and throughout these different parts of your country.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like, you get back to what Don and all y'all was talking about, we'll never be as bluesy as the South.
Mm.
We'll never be that bluesy.
We can aspire, and we can have some excellent talent to make us
Yeah,
feel
we
that
ain't
way, but
We ain't no Clarksdale. We ain't gonna be that. But we can understand and love it. Just, you know, that don't mean we ain't liking it.
Yeah. So one of the audience members asked a question about the real kind of defining the blues itself as a kind of music and separating it from things like R&B, rhythm and blues, soul, etc. Like, what do you think is the thing that really like kind of defines this one kind of music, blues? When you say real blues as opposed to something else, what is the thing there that you think separates those?
Well, I still think that it's about the feeling. It's a feeling about life, such as it is with you, with inside your lifestyle. You outside the rhythm of it, which a lot of people can like and don't even pay attention to my words too much. But there's that kind of blues of that hits you like a preacher on Sunday might hit you right there where you like you've been reading your mind.
Yeah.
Some of the blues is like that.
just to add on to that even
Yeah.
a little bit, if you think about if you know what original blues sounds like, if you know the different riffs, the different strumming, the different type of, it's blues is not your ka-chang, 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 rock and roll band. It's just not. It's one of those things that it's like a good massage. There's a difference between a good massage and somebody that's just beating you across your shoulders real rigidly. So real blues is like a good massage, and it's not necessarily a high treble toned, fast kind of jab me in my ear with a pencil kind of sound. I don't know if that's going to help define what this person is asking, but that is the difference between real blues and some of the revamped versions that we hear today.
And I think a lot of it also has to do with what we talked about earlier in terms of the lyrics and the experience of what's coming out of the person who's performing it. And I think that's why I use the word perform, because there's a difference in the person actually depicting an experience or something they're feeling versus them behaving in a very performative manner, which is what I believe Don is getting at in terms of that real massage.
Yes.
And so, and it's very obvious. It's not something that is very difficult to spot. And that's, again, because that's why the blues is such an expression heavy art form, that it's very easy to depict a performance versus an experience, right? And so I think that's something that has to be put into place too, is that, you know, all the best blues music I've ever heard has always been about the experience, and all of the I won't call it fake because it's still music, but all of the non-blues like blues music has always been about something that was more superficial, something that wasn't necessarily tied to the person who's actually performing or tied to the actual theme of what's actually going on. I mean, there's a lot of it out there on YouTube. You can listen to it. But I agree that it's a clear distinction, and you can hear it.
It's hard to describe, but you can hear it.
You can hear it. Oh yeah, it's a feeling, you know. And there you got artists that are and writers, especially singers, that they don't really want to record or do a song regularly on their show if they don't feel it. It's got to mean something to them. You know, it's hard to. It's like talking about something you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
you gotta be there to live it or something before you can sell it. You don't know.
That's right. That's right.
You gotta sell it.
Yes.
So you know, that's what it's all about. You gotta first, have it in here. So if that song don't mean nothing but to you, and most of the time you're gonna leave it alone. Unless it's just something that a novelty song or something, that everybody's trying to have fun with. But I'm talking about a serious blues song or whatever. You gonna need to know that. You gonna need to know what's going on.
Yeah, sounds like there's an authenticity to it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That is kind of the defining characteristic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think about
whereas with R&B and other forms of music, you can craft a song that's not necessarily an experience.
Right.
You can make a song, and again, I'm speaking more so to the 80s and 90s R&B wave, which I do enjoy a lot.
Oh yeah,
but
me too.
But let's be clear though, that it is a far cry from blues music in many cases. And even though a lot of the songs may be talking about love, a lot of the love is not necessarily that kind of love that comes from the experience of dealing with love, if that makes sense. And again, when you listen to a Keith Sweat song from the 1980s, or
I know where you're going.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, when you listen to a Keith Sweat song, or I even go to if you listen to like SWV or Escape or some of these other groups, they're talking about the issues of love. But when you listen to a blues song and they're walking you through the day-by-day steps of trying to recapture the love of somebody, or trying to figure out how you're going to bring your loved one to Chicago now that you found this job that you've been searching for to get them away from the lynching in the South. It's a bit different. Or as my good brother said, working on that assembly line.
Yes, that's right.
No other experience. If
and they can relate to
working on the assembly line or built tires, or done anything in the auto industry as a blue collar worker, there is no way to capture that experience on stage unless they're doing a cover. That's the only way.
That's the only way.
Yep.
And the sad part about that is though, that even in the South, the Southern blues singers, they're losing some of that because they're just going with the trash that they think that little audience want to hear.
Right.
And, you know, they talking about, they just think that everything they think about now has got to be about not only sex, is they don't went past love. They don't know about no love.
Yeah.
They don't know about, they won't use that word no more.
I didn't even go into the 2000s. Don't even get me started on that. I was just speaking, it with the 80s and 90s who had a respect for the blues. But once you get past 2000, all bets are off.
They don't went all past all that. I just wanted to get that guy because that's really why
Exactly.
I ain't been doing none of them songs. On my show.
I mean, I will say there's some dirty songs from the 30s too. So
Yeah.
you know,
A lot
You better listen to 2000 stuff.
yeah.
You think that's dirty? You listen to that. Bob know what I'm talking about.
A lot of double entendre in some of those early blues songs like that.
Oh Lord, they got heavy now.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, for audience members, I think it'd be interesting to know, like, are there some songs, some particular songs that they could go to that you think are like really like songs that encapsulate this sense of authenticity and of kind of, you know, whatever it is, if it's love or it's work or it's, you know, what are some blues songs that really stick with you that audience members might want to check out?
Nobody knows when you're down and out, Bessie.
Oh yeah,
You gotta
that's
go
good
with
stuff.
Nobody knows you when you're down and out. Yep. All right.
Of course, you gotta go with the brother Robert Johnson, and pretty much the whole list of things really with him.
Yeah, his music.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong.
Muddy Waters, Crossroad Blues would be the number.
Sure.
Well, you know, Al Green and all them, Tyrone Davis and them guys, they had good stuff. They, you know, hey, when you get right down to it, I mean, Little Milton was a pretty good writer.
Yep.
And you figure Eddie James, you can never leave her out, but she wasn't too much of a writer, but she did a lot of, she was very particular about what she was singing.
Yeah.
She was very particular about that. And then Aretha Franklin, well, Aretha Franklin did everything. You name it, Aretha did it. And wasn't scared to do it and did it well. So you could, if you can't find something that to relate to what Aretha's been doing, something wrong.
That's right.
Because
Billie Holiday. Strange Fruit should be mandatory listening.
And you know, even Gladys Knight and the Pits, those songs mean a lot. You know, Gladys got down to some. If you really want to know, she sung some serious stuff.
She did.
Yeah.
And Coco Taylor did a lot of what was considered bottom of the barrels kind of blues. You know,
Yeah.
She went as far as to include our Southern dialect into her lyrics. You know, I do a song often with the Painkillers, Wang Dang Doodle.
Yeah.
And that was.
Who got you on that?
But that was one of those songs where, you know, I like to open up when I'm starting that song, I like to open up and tell people, now I don't know exactly what she's saying, but I think it goes a little something like this, you know. And then I get started with it, but it's things like that. That's, you know, that's real blues. That's, if anybody wants to know what blues is, listen to Wang Dang Doodle,
Yeah.
listen to Voodoo Woman, you
Yeah.
know, listen, these types of things. Women ended up
Boy,
coming into that blues era and changing up the game a little bit for the fellas, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's a lot of those heavy hitting women songs that people
yeah,
just
Big Mama Thornton.
Big Mama Thornton she wasn't playing. She was so cold blooded. Elvis took her song.
Right.
You know?
Hound Dog, sure. You know, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Willie Dixon wrote Wang Dang Doodle, and originally he wrote
Right.
that for Howlin' Wolf.
Yes.
Yeah.
When he heard
Yeah.
Coco Taylor, he says, "You got to do this song," and he
It was
almost
That's-
forced her. You know.
And that's exactly what happened. The women blues artists and singers ended up revamping a lot of the men's songs.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you'll find men's songs out there stepping out, stepping in. There's a woman singing it too in
Yeah.
her version at another
Yeah.
time. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's right there, and it's right there for, you know, men, for women. You just gotta feel good with it because it makes you feel good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like Memphis Minnie. For me, she's
Mhm. I
underrated.
forgot about Memphis Minnie.
Yeah, me too.
She wrote a lot of songs.
Yeah, she did.
Killer guitar player.
Yeah.
One of the first blues musicians to record on electric guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe she wrote the song "When the Levee Breaks," which Led Zeppelin made famous like 50 years. But that was, like they say, songs about real life. It was when the
Right,
levees
it
broke
was real
down
life.
south.
Yep.
And all the fields flooded. Charlie Patton wrote songs about the same things, about levees and
Yeah.
when the floods came through the South like that. Again, songs about real life.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I love them. I love them.
So one of our audience members asked about Champaign Urbana and the railroad line, and whether that was an important part of sort of bringing blues kind of here over the years. If that helped, as he said, keep that blues growing here. The railroad line, I guess, between New Orleans and
Mhm.
Oh,
Mm,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, well, yeah, it has something to do with it because a lot of the gut bucket blues, I used to call it gut bucket blues because it was, it had the one structure.
Mhm. We just passing through.
Yeah, but it come through because a lot of the guys was passing through, and they come through here, and they find where we hung out at. They could get in there and set up with a guitar and a harmonica and maybe two pieces of drum or whatever, and they be out on the side of the clubs or side of, it wasn't no joints for them. They just played. And because they wanted to play and make everybody happy on weekends, and people buy beer, whiskey, whatever, they just have a good time. So a lot of those trances guys on the way to Chicago or coming from Chicago, going back to Mississippi or to Tennessee. And that's how I got introduced to the Muddy Waters and Lightning Hopkins and all that, because we used to go up to Chicago to Jewtown, where we're going to get the zoot suits and shoots and all kind of the funny clothes that wasn't worth a dime. They sell some leather coats and wasn't leather. And they made all that old stuff, but if we go down there, and I know where to go, because I'd go down there, oh shoot, I'm trying to think of the name of the street.
Maxwell Street.
Maxwell, yeah, Maxwell Street. And hey, all you have to do is go down there. Them guys be outside, inside, they be kicking. Heck, I see, shoot, not Little Order, but Junior Wells and what the other guy? Oh, Howard Wolf.
Yep.
He come through there, but how it was about money. Him and Muddy didn't like each other. They didn't like each other. But I learned more about them two from the horn man that died. Used to come here all the time. Sang the blues with Muddy now. Played the horn. That wore the captain's hat.
Pinetop Perkins?
No, he was a tenor man. He played the tenor for
Thinking about Eddie Shaw?
Eddie Shaw, yeah. Yeah, Eddie Shaw, you know, he come down here a lot, different times. And I used to see him in Chicago when I go up here of a blues thing. And he used to tell me a lot of stories about them too. And he said that all that came from different spots. He said he was one of them. He came from South down there when they was coming through there, and he had a bag of clothes, a small bag of clothes, and his tenor horn. And then he said that's how he got here. So that had a lot to do with what was going on, the transmission between the South and coming up here. Everybody was headed for Chicago, but then not everybody get to Chicago. They found places along the way that
they stayed at.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Candy, your club was what, a half a block away from a train station, right?
Yes, yeah. As a matter of fact, some of them guys, they got came down here on the train. I'm trying to think of who knows that, but yeah, they and then Eddie Harris, he was kind of a blues man, tenor man, and listen here, and I can't think of the guy that played that. You know the guy, Walker.
Junior Walker?
No, not Junior Walker, but I know about Junior Walker. Junior Walker, right over here in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Yeah. But oh man. But anyway, I used to have a lot of different cats come down through here. I wish I could think of the guy's name that came down and played at my club, and I ended up singing with him at B.B. King's club in Memphis. And I'll tell you, they're talking about that. I did.
That's great. Well, we are just about at time here. We had this is scheduled to go till 5:30, I believe. But I know there are a handful of other questions still on, so I'm not sure if people want to stick around after this is over for that or not. Certainly, I wanted to say thanks to everybody for really a pretty remarkable conversation about the blues and about life and about the way this music has lived in your lives and in the culture at large. So it's really been a real pleasure having everybody here and taking this on. So I don't know if the Spurlock folks, I can't remember if you all are going to come back on or not, but I guess, all right. If there's, I don't know, it's a webinar, so I would say, and now like join me in thanking all of the panelists. Applause. So I'll just do that for you all.
Hey, Bob, that singer and artist was A.C. Green.
Oh, sure, yeah, okay.
That's who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think Eddie Shaw was more playing with Howlin' Wolf those times.
Yeah, that's right.
AC, yeah.
But he said that Muddy hired him first though.
Yeah.
But Muddy wasn't hardly paying. He paying that much. So he left Muddy. Muddy got mad too. But
Howlin' Wolf was noted for treating his musicians real well.
yeah,
I think he even had a health plan for the musicians that played in
I
the
heard.
band
No
way
kidding.
back in the 50s and the 60s. So
Yeah.
Wow.
Shaw said, Muddy came over here while he was playing with, he said, man, I thought you supposed to be playing with me. He said, no, I told you I was quitting. And you never really hired me anyway. You just said, come and play and I'll pay. He said, well, you still owe us for one show.
Yeah.
And so he said, you owe me right now. So it said, was a guy he's playing for come up and said, how much he owe you? And paid him right on the spot.
Wow.
Say, yeah, you don't owe him nothing. You need to get out of his face. And then, man, and they go, almost put the fighting up in the place. That was funny. He had a lot of stories about that stuff. Wolf was said, here's your money.
Now leave him alone.
You leave him alone. Yeah. And the other one was a little, what's that, Milton, not Milton, but
Richard? I don't know Richard.
messing with the kid.
Oh.
Junior Wells?
Wells.
yeah.
Yeah, Junior Wells.
They had a guy running around one year there, posing as little
Junior Wells?
Junior Wells, down in the small towns.
Oh, yeah, I heard about
And
that.
he was doing concerts.
I heard about that. Yeah, yeah. And he ended up, they picked him up, wasn't it? Yeah.
Because sometimes he couldn't, he didn't have no band half the time, so he'd run, he'd get the money and run.
Mhm.
And I said, man, I run into Junior. I was guy, I said, Junior, I don't know if you know it. I said, you got a guy running around down in this area and pulling this you. And I said, if you supposed to be going down there at the time was Blind Pig was having all them.
Yep.
Cowboy Monkey or was it Blind Pig?
It was the Blind Pig.
Yeah, it was having all the shows. Lonnie Brooks and all them were coming down.
Yep.
And I said, when you go down there, man, you might run into some trouble. He was like, he's stuttering a bit. What you take? I said, there's a guy running around there saying he's you. And he's been running off with the money and no show. He ain't doing no show. People like, where is Junior Wells? And so he's like, oh man, you can hear him talk. You think he couldn't talk then? When he got mad, he could talk. You better catch him. I get him. And then he found out, he went on, he really investigated it a little bit. And you know what they told me? They said, Junior said, tell you that he found out about that guy. He didn't never catch him. He said that kid was raised up in the same neighborhood about 3 doors from him.
Wow.
He was younger, but he knew about Junior. He knew his family and everything, so he could
He could play that card.
Yeah, he told everything.
Yeah.
I don't know how long he got away with it. He got away with it in Danville.
All right, I'm getting the note from the organizers here that they're going to have to shut down the webinar. So
We having too much fun.
gold. One more time, thank you so much to all you all for joining and for really having such a brilliant conversation about a music we all really love. So That is fantastic.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you
Thanks
for
to the
having us.
Spurlock
and
Museum,
extending
yes.
that invite. Yes, thank you,
Big thank you
Spurlock.
to Spurlock.
And keep that young man in the loop, because he's our future.
Talking about Augustus.
Yes,
Gus, yeah.
he's
All
our
right.
future.
Spread the word.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank
It's
you.
an honor.